video, please.
First we had the metadata repository, then the data warehouse, then the big data lake. Each wave has had similar characteristics. The promise of business value, followed by frantic adoption without big picture thinking, leading to inevitable failures and disillusionment. The latest waves are about data and artificial intelligence, and once again the technology looks enticing. Let's get it right this time.
Once again, welcome everyone, and I have a great honor and privilege today to introduce Derek Strauss and his group of panelists for a great discussion entitled Refocusing on Artificial Intelligence and Data Management. Derek is the founder and principal consultant of Gavroche, former chief data officer at TD Ameritrade for approximately 5 years. By the way, during which period I was CEO of Gavroche behind Derek, so I've known him for some time and we've worked together for a number of years. I won't go into all the details of his sordid past. Suffice to say that he does have a lot of expertise and wisdom to bring, and so I'll leave it at that. Alan Rodriguez, who I just met, is the founder of Data Freedom Foundation. It's an open source nonprofit standards body creating revolutionary consent and privacy technologies. I don't know Alan well. I could make up some things about him, but I won't. All right, and we'll go to the final person, which is Hamid and Benbrahim. Okay, that would be, he's the Chief Data and Analytics Officer of Verimex. His bio is that he has financial industry experience which spans over 15 years advancing investment management and systemic risk strategy with big data, machine learning, and systems thinking. Prior senior leadership roles have included CEO at Natural Numerics, Chief Data Scientist at TD Ameritrade, and Head of Applied Complexity Research at Fidelity. Please join me in welcoming this distinguished panel of speakers.
Thanks very much, Mark, and welcome to the last fling of the day. This is going to be like a fireside chat kind of a situation. The three of us are going to be commenting on the various slides that we've got, and would like to make sure that we leave a little bit of time towards the end as well for a couple of questions, if there are any out there. It's a big topic, of course, taking data and AI and putting them all together and making it successful. We have 30 minutes, or actually a little more like 20 minutes, if we want to leave some time for interaction with you guys. So we're going to just hit the high spots of a couple of key things. And, you know, obviously for you to have a really successful marriage of data and AI, there's so many more things that we're going to be able to cover in this time. So, you know, I want to just set that as context, that we're going to be drilling down into one specific area once we've set the stage. But there's so many other things as well that need to be put in place to make this successful. And of course, you'll hear from many other presenters during the course of these 3 days that we're all together, some of those other pieces for you to kind of piece together. So that said, on the intro that Mark gave us, one of the things, and you'll probably notice, is that the three of us worked together at TD Ameritrade. We were all together on one team at that point, and we've stayed in contact with each other since then and gone our own individual ways, but always been collaborating. So this fireside chat is, you know, a little bit of the results of some of that collaboration subsequent to our years at TD Ameritrade. So there's a little bit more of a background on the three of us. You can see that Hamid and Alan are a lot more handsome than I am. So let's just move on to the next slide.
Too.
The next slide, where we really on the theme that you saw in the short video clip there, in terms of the fact that we've had these various waves of things that have come through. You know, data warehousing, everyone gets all excited, runs towards that, tries it out. A small percentage are successful. Everyone else says, that didn't work, throw it out. And then they're on to the next thing. Oh, big data lake. Well, let's go after that. And all these things, you know, data mesh, data blah, 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 you know, whatever, comes out and everyone gets excited and runs towards it. AI, machine learning, let's run towards that. You know, it's this frenzy that we've seen, the feeding frenzy that happens. And, you know, what we're essentially saying is, let's get it right this time. Let's not get so kind of emotionally attached to the latest buzzword and drop everything else and think that this thing is going to be nirvana. It's going to sort everything out. It's the final perfect silver bullet. So, Alan, do you want to maybe just talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. So, you know, I think the foundational concept that we'd like to discuss with everyone is when we, as Derek is saying, we look throughout history and many of our longer careers as data professionals. Our world faces this profound problem with data and trust. Data propagates today online without any kind of active metadata to document ownership or to assert ownership or to define and enforce any kind of terms of use or agreements or to record its provenance. And this is sort of like our default state. We've come to recognize and to accept the fact that data is inert, it's lifeless, it's dead in essence. It's sort of like a trail of things we leave behind. Of largely unknown data quality, and this causes both problems with organizations and in society as a whole, right? And it creates justifiable skepticism with data and analytics within and between organizations and people. Obviously, this impairs any kind of downstream use of data when we have questionable or unknown data quality and data provenance. And it results in poor outcomes, both for businesses and for people and society. Of course, with lost opportunities for businesses and societies as well. And it's this lack of trust in data quality we're saying is the root cause for most data challenges facing organizations today.
Yeah, so when it comes to trying to do, you know, really good AI and machine learning and all those kinds of things, I mean, if the data sucks, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, it really doesn't make too much sense to dive headlong into doing AI if you haven't really thought about the data side. And as Alan brought it out, I mean, the key is the whole provenance side of things. And that's, you know, certainly one key element that we do want to try and drill into a little bit more in this chat that we're having here. So I think, you know, next step really is to talk about the whole AI hype thing. And Hamid, that's your bag, man.
Well, I mean, yes, I'm sure you have all heard lots about hype, about AI, and there are so many sexy ideas that come out of that in terms of the power of AI. Lots of it is real. I mean, that's the thing. AI is an incredibly powerful thing. However, the way we understand AI and the way we think about implementing it, it has been misguided and is still being misguided in many cases. I'm just going to point to a number of things here. The first one is AI can learn without human intervention. Many products, many people think of, okay, let me throw a bunch of data to this AI tool and it's going to solve the problem for me. That is a myth. AI cannot learn things on its own. Imagine, for example, you are a caveman. You're the smartest caveman, and I give you this beautiful Ferrari. You're going to look and say, okay, go ahead, analyze it. You're the most brilliant one. You're going to start analyzing the color, the tires. You're going to start touching it, but you're never going to think that, oh, those keys inside, I can turn them, I can drive the car and pick up all the hottest chicks. So that thing you will never come out to because you're looking at what's interesting in the data, but not what the data is being useful for. So you need the human intervention to guide that kind of learning and exploration. The other one is AI can solve problems. AI does not solve problems. AI organizes the data in ways that enables a decision maker or an expert to quickly analyze the problem and solve the problem. AI is intelligent. No, AI is dumb. There's no intelligence in AI. What AI does is it just computes huge amounts of data in an efficient way and can blow it up in so many different dimensions and then regroup it in ways that enables reasoning. So it automates reasoning, but it does not reason. Okay, vendors can provide turnkey solutions. Anyone who still believes in that definitely is going to be in for a rude awakening. Okay, the reality. And these are the real powerful things. AI can classify objects, allowing humans to rapidly make decisions. Imagine you're in sales and you have like a list of thousands of prospects. You can call them one by one, or you can have an AI system classify them based on the propensity of them responding to a particular message or something. That's immediate gain in productivity. It allows you to quickly focus on spend your resources on what will provide you the biggest value. AI can identify out-of-pattern cases, allowing humans to find suspicious activity or interesting things. This is one of the most important uses of AI, is to find what is special in the data. And then when you find what is special, then you use your subject matter expertise to see how you can exploit that. Is that an opportunity? Is that a threat? And, or is that data quality issue or a bug or something like that? AI can identify structural similarities. So when you look, for example, at the behaviors of thousands of customers, or the behavior of systems, the types of defects you get into your system, the types of threats, you start finding similarities between this domain or this universe of cases. And based on those similarities, you can take the learning you received in one area to apply it to anything that is somewhat structurally similar, and then you can start developing strategies and building tools that are fit for those structures. AI can identify connections between events. So the cause and effect relationships, for example. You see something happening here, something happening over there, you can make the connection. A customer clicks on these links, and then 3 years later, they buy the product. That tells you maybe there's a connection there. Once you start building those connections, then you enable predictive analytics. Another powerful thing about AI is discovering hidden models inside the system. So for example, you've seen robotic systems that, for example, would parallel park a trailer truck, for example, which is a very difficult thing to do. So AI systems can learn the inside model of the dynamics of how the truck moves and so forth, and then allows you to say, okay, here's the final position I want to be in. Then it applies that model to apply basically the angle of the steering wheel and the acceleration and so forth, so that the system behaves the way you want it to behave.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things that we want to try and emphasize as we go through this is, there are a whole lot of key aspects about the methodology that you would use if you were going to focus on using AI, machine learning, and data science. But and we're not going to read through each one of these, but I think it's important for us just to focus in on that second heading of understanding the data. Everything that Hamid has just talked about is absolutely key, but if it's not done from a perspective of understanding the problem, understanding the data, understanding the tools, understanding the results, it's not going to work. But in the context of what we're talking about here, the focus that we want to have is on the understanding of the data. And specifically that second bullet point, does the data quality affect the structure of the data? And obviously, the answer is many times yes. Many times the data quality, and that's where we get back to the whole data provenance thing and the dependencies between data and AI. You can't just do AI and forget about the data. If you're going to have a strategy, it's got to be a strategy that combines from both sides. Now, do you want to talk a bit?
Yeah, so since trust is a big topic here, and also the ethics of AI has been a big part of the narrative in the news lately. So when you think about an AI system that computes the eligibility of customers to get a loan, for instance, that AI system learns from history, as all AI systems do. And that history is made by humans who have all kinds of biases. So the AI system will learn all of those biases and apply them. So yes, the AI system is learning from human behavior, but are you using the right human behavior? Are you using the right controls to make sure you are not enshrining biases into the system? And the danger of it is people say, there is no bias, it's a computer system, there is no human involved, it's AI, it's intelligent, it learned by itself, it knows that when somebody looks like Derek, run away, change sidewalks. So all of these things, they're not coming out of thin air, they're coming from human biases. Another thing is AI can manipulate humans. So the recommendation engines, they feed their recommendations from your own behavior. And also, by making recommendations, they are actually influencing their own behavior. They're almost creating some kind of echo chamber that starts reinforcing certain types of behaviors that are embedded within the dynamics of the model. So the model, when it gives you a suggestion, for example, and the way you act on it, then it follows up with the next one, and so forth. So many times you end up finding your behavior actually being influenced by what AI system. And this is one of the most dangerous areas of AI that's more and more people will be talking about. We talked about the echo chamber, repetition. So sometimes when a lie is repeated many times, it becomes reality. So when AI system sees a situation that happens over and over and over, then it overtrains on that, and it becomes basically creates reality from false situation. Some credibility issues of AI, lack of transparency. AI models are by definition black boxes, so a lot of people have a hard time understanding why it made the decision it did. Prediction errors. So one of the things is humans, they always score bad things much bigger than they score good things. So if an AI system gives you great prediction 51% of the time, you will not say, wow, this thing is great, because if I invest my money based on 51% prediction, I'll be a multi-billionaire. Instead, we look at it and say, well, 49%, you're wrong. And that's one of the problems that hurts the credibility of AI. And the reason it's wrong is because we are looking at AI from the wrong point of view. We're judging AI based on how well it predicts things. But we should judge it instead of how much productivity it is giving to me. So if I'm getting a prediction of 51%, that means I'm getting 1% productivity, as opposed to thinking, oh, you're wrong, 49%. So that's the kind of mind shift that we need to put in place. I'll skip the rest because I think we're...
So, as we're going through this, of course, the key has to do with, data at the end of the day. It does come back to understanding what kind of data do we have that we're going to be using to feed into our AI work, and creating the right measures of success for that is what is really where we have to focus. Education, awareness of data, and the AI advantage, as Hamid mentioned, is also absolutely key to make sure we get that right. So, there is an overall overarching framework that we use in order to be able to focus on getting all the pieces in place for the data and analytics so that AI can be successful, that machine learning can be successful in the long term. And, obviously, two of those, are really apropos to the discussion we're having now, which is the data quality one, the fourth stream, and because that includes data provenance, as well as the fifth one, which is the data context, the metadata. side of things. So that's just for context, that slide, but data provenance is one of the fundamental issues that we're talking about here in terms of if we can get that right, we're moving in the right direction in terms of creating the data foundation that is going to make AI and machine learning and data science a whole lot more effective. And these 5 bullets are bullets that you could read up afterwards. The slides are going to be obviously available to everyone. But in essence, let's go straight into the smart data architecture, which again is one piece of the puzzle that we want to leave you with. And Alan, can you take us through that?
Yeah, so let me just give you all, I know we had a brief introduction, thank you, but I founded Data Freedom Foundation, and I've been working on this idea of data consent and data privacy for almost a decade, along with some other colleagues of mine. We began working from a decade ago. Our mission is to create consent technology that operates at the data level. For consent to work and to withdraw it, you have to be able, you can't rely on any third parties, right? That's not really consent. And our approach to consent technology secures the data, it protects it, it monitors the data and how it's used everywhere it moves. And let's step back and talk about how we do that. We started by recognizing that we had to put the data inside some kind of a shell. It wasn't enough to just depend on all the layered defenses that exist around data today. And that shell needed to allow us to attach contracts to the data as it moves. This idea of attaching contracts to data is not new. The original creators of the internet at MIT and at the W3C and the IETF as early as 2005, all the way through about 2012, there was almost a dozen interoperable standards groups that were working on this exact problem. And they imagined digital contracts attached to data everywhere it moves, contracts that assert ownership, record provenance, limit its use by others, and even revoke access. And I'm just take a moment and raise your hand if any of you all even knew that this was being worked on over a decade ago. Yeah. Even here, it was worked on. And in 2012, when GDPR was released and Facebook went through its IPO, every single one of the standards groups working on this very idea all shut down at the same time. When we were working together, and as I was working in digital marketing prior to this, I was following these efforts. And when they all shut down, I realized that one of 2 outcomes would unfold over the next decade. Either we would revert back to those ideas in some capacity, maybe some smart people somewhere would do something, right? Or nothing would happen, and we'd have much of what we have today. And so what's really fascinating is over the arc of the last decade, all of the technology parts to move forward that vision of attaching contracts to data, all the parts exist today. This is the big insight I'm trying to pass along to everyone here. There's 2 kind of core parts. The first one is this idea of a data container or a data object. I know y'all are data professionals, so I'm just going to geek out a little bit, but imagine a SQLite data file. Our cell phones have hundreds, if not thousands of them on them already. We use these to take an individual data owner's data, and we're able to put that data in the container, and the whole architecture is designed for edge caching and for performance. It's metaverse and Web3 interoperable. And it ensures data quality and data provenance and trust. The next question I guess you're probably asking is, these data containers, they're not all isolated, right? The data within them can be referenced one another semantically. And so we have both an origin, and then we have where the replicas and copies are being moved around and used. And we're imagining that as a distributed knowledge graph that tracks all the data containers through the entire data lifecycle. All the interactions, all the transactions of every container, and every version, every replica. Another piece of the puzzle that was being worked on, or has been worked on in the last decade, there's another group that's another group of people out of Canada called TOTAQ, And they're a bunch of cryptographers that have been working on cryptographic proof of provenance. And they're also part of our consortium. And so they have cryptographic technology is kind of like a stamp that you would put on an envelope or a passport. And everywhere the data container moves, it's cryptographically, it's kind of like a blockchain attached to the data container, effectively. Yeah. Raising your hand? Oh, shoot. Okay. Anyway, so long story short, as we worked on this and as we assembled the initial set of partners with the various technology parts, we began to realize that we were attaching smart contracts to the containers. We began to realize that we could control who can access the data, when they can access it, where they can access, what questions they ask of it. We have partners in the consortium that are specialized in zero-knowledge proofs and secure multi-party computation and differential privacy, for instance, so that we can now move the containers around. People can interact with the data itself and not reveal the underlying data. Next slide. So what does this mean, right? So this concept of smart data lets us broker all kinds of agreements and transactions, interactions in a more private way. We can improve how we monetize data. We can track data provenance within and between organizations. We can remotely control the uses of data. We imbue the data with the same intelligence that we imbue any kind of intelligent device. So anywhere where we put a CPU and software into hardware, right? You think about all the power that imbues the hardware, right? Well, we can imbue that with our data and make it self-aware, and we can even secure the data at the data level so that it doesn't rely on any other layers around it for its protection. So that's the short version. Short as I can make it.
Just one thing I would like to, when I heard this, suddenly a light bulb came in my mind is we spent so much time on talking about organizing the data, making it clean, organized, add AI, create value. What he's doing is setting the data free. So instead of being trapped inside your organization with these types of tools, now you can let it be free, be part of an ecosystem of developers, users, and you can share it across, which is incredibly powerful idea.
Yeah, and it kind of in summary, I think, as we mentioned in the introduction, there's so many things that go into creating a really robust strategy for data and AI, bringing them all together. We've shared with you one piece of the puzzle in terms of a smart data kind of approach. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to it. A lot of these slides try to set a bigger context, but within the context of the 30 minutes we've had with you, we've had to focus on just one small piece of it, which in fact is, as Hamid said, a really powerful concept, and it's reality now as well. So I think that's really what we want to leave you with, is the fact that let's get it right this time. Let's not just say, oh, all we have to do is buy this particular vendor's tool because it's got AI and ML and blah, blah, blah in it. That's not going to work terribly well for us. We need to think bigger picture. We need to think about bringing data and our AI together, and we need to think about innovative things like smart data. So thank you for your attention. I'm not sure if we've got any time at all. We've got 2 minutes here, maybe.
We've got 2 minutes, and we're at the end of the day, so we could go slightly over if the audience would stay for a minute or two. Do you have a question? Looks like you have a question, or you're going to come down and be a serial killer.
Good job, Zach. Extremely excited about the idea of contracts, and I think that's a big missing piece, so I'll look into that more later. My question really goes to democratization of AI, and you mentioned on one of your slides, it's sort of, I'm going to paraphrase, but the more people involved, the better. I'm kind of wondering if I read that right, because when I think of data mesh architecture, and so people, a new shiny object, everybody's going to the light now, and it's kind of crazy. But the idea is that you take all these skills and you put them into the business domains, and you have people who are data scientists in business domains, and you've got pipeline builders and orchestrators and all these people out there, right? And then you've got your data robots, which are extremely hot a few years ago, and I guess continues to be a hot vendor democratizing AI, and I just wonder, do you think that is the end objective, is turn everyone into a data scientist with AI?
Everyone is a data scientist. Darwin was a data scientist. We do it every day in our business decisions. We observe things, and we learn from history, and then we make decisions based on that. And unfortunately, as the world becomes more specialized, you can only be the data scientist if you can write Python code or if you use such and such system. So part of democratization, and there are great tools nowadays that allows business subject matter experts who has no technical expertise can interact with a data platform through advanced visualization, through all kinds of what-if scenarios and things like that. So they can interact with the system to guide the system to come up with a solution. And through visualization, they can see patterns, they can see clusters, and then they can click on them and say, okay, what's so special about this cluster? And they start interacting with the system without being data scientists.
All right. Well, with that having been said, I am going to have to bring us to a close. The presenters will be here for questions that you might have after the presentation. Can we have a round of applause for the group? And it's a very rousing presentation. I know myself, I have a lot of questions and would like to learn more. So this is the end of today's program. Good night.
Thank you.